Get ready. It's time for the Idaho Podcast with your host, Danny Ventura. Welcome to the Idaho Podcast, where we feature the people who live, work, and play in Idaho. So glad to have you with us today. My guest is Christian Phernetton, and he is the chef and owner of the Chef's Farm and Farmer's Stash. Welcome to the show, Christian.
Hello.
You grew up in Idaho, and then you left to pursue your dreams in Montana. And so what is the rest of your Idaho story? Because that's where we start on the Idaho Podcast.
Yes. So I grew up here in Idaho, and I went to Meridian High School. And I started cooking at Peter Schatz in high school, which was one of my first experiences. And
Peter Schatz in downtown Boise?
In downtown Boise, yes. It's not currently around anymore, but it was a classic back in the day. And at that point, I wanted to go to culinary school. And so I left to go to Montana to learn cooking at other places. And I traveled around to a few different towns, Missoula, Helena. Then finally I decided to take the leap to Miami, Florida, which was a huge change for someone like me from Idaho. It's a huge culture shock, but that was my first experience in, I guess you'd call it, world-class restaurants at Chef Allen's in Aventura, Florida.
Did you do any formal training as a chef, or did you just get immersed into restaurants and learn from some of the best?
So I've only worked hands-on, and then I have quite the cookbook collection. So in my off time, I'm always reading and researching.
So about how old were you when you left for Montana, when you left Idaho?
I think might have been in my 20s. It was probably in the 97, maybe.
Okay.
98, I think.
And as you mentioned, you spent time at Peter Schatz in downtown Boise, which at the time I think was a pretty swanky restaurant. And then your quest for culinary excellence took you to some of the most noted restaurants in the United States, and some of the cities like Chicago and New York City and San Francisco and Washington, D.C., Miami. Tell us about your experiences, starting with Peter Schatz and some of the other restaurants that you were so fortunate to have worked with.
Well, Peter Schatz was still, in my book, the best restaurant ever. It was one of my very first experiences, so it was very impressionable. And to me, Peter Schatz he was a master chef, so he knew everything, and he was around all the time, is where you don't see that quite so much anymore. And then I say my next experience would probably be in Aventura, Florida, where it was with Chef Alan Sutzer and Chef Allen's. And that exposed me to huge kitchens, 50 plus staff, and ingredients I've never seen before in my life. Mangoes, papayas, plantains, monk, all kinds of ingredients I've never seen before. Great experience. Huge culture shock for me. And after that, Chicago, which I spent probably around 10 years in lots of different kitchens. La France, Trotters, Old Town Brasserie, Naha. And after that, I went to a French country inn outside of DC, which was called La Berge Provençal, which was one of my favorite experiences, where we had orchards and gardens, and that kind of where a lot of my passion for the source of the ingredient, the quality of the ingredient started. Up until that point, vegetables and products just arrived in the back door in a box. Yeah, that was just a really great experience, and that's what's led me to where I am today. I've also spent quite a few years on the New England coast in Camden, Maine, also Moosehead Lake, Maine, and a few places in Connecticut. And right before moving back to Idaho, I spent a good probably 8 years in the Bay Area. There I had I worked at a lot of high-end restaurants as well, and then I had experience of being a culinary director for a food company called Mission Heirloom. I was based in health. Was everything we made was served in glass. There was no plastic. We certified all of our farms through our own processes before we used them. And then if we didn't certify them, our requirements were organic was the lowest certification, and then biodynamic was preferable for us. And that was a great experience learning about the agriculture system, which is kind of led me to where I am today.
You're a big proponent of local organic ingredients, and I think that's awesome. And it's I know you were recognized by both New Yorker magazine as well as the New York Times for some of your culinary success. And what was that? What was that like to be recognized by such highly regarded publications? And then share a few of some of the dishes that was the impetus to get the notoriety.
Sure. Well, the carrot steak has been the big one. That just rised out of lots of carrots. My beginning stages of farming and chefing led me to huge abundances of harvests and then also complete failures. And so I think it was 2017 when opened Camel's Crossing. I had an abundance of carrots, and so I made carrot soup, and then I designed this dish called the carrot steak, which was a roasted carrot with black lentils, portobello bacon, and cashew cream, and pea tendril salad. And it seemed to eat like a steak, and it was a hit from the beginning. I think it was served there almost its whole entirety of the restaurant's life. Yeah.
Hmm. So you kind of had that sweetness from the carrot and the savoriness from the portobello and the other ingredients you
Yeah.
mentioned. It's that sounds remarkable. I would love to try one of those. Do you still make that as part of your menus currently?
The carrot aspect, but I mix. I do a lot more of local grains and different things like that, as opposed to those black lentils. At that time, they weren't an Idaho source product, and so now after after more years of being back in Idaho, I've I don't need to go anywhere else.
Well, and that brings us to in 2016, you did come back to Idaho and you've been here ever since. And came here to embark upon your vision of the Chef's Farm, which is an 11-acre biodynamic farm that's nestled in Hammett. And then you delved into exploring in sustainability and electroculture gardening, and your farm flourished. And then in 2023, you opened Farmer's Stash, a restaurant in downtown Mountain Home, which kind of gives you a culinary space that's rooted in both community and creativity. I'd love to have you share your experiences on the farm currently, and obviously what led to the opening of the Farmer's Stash.
Farming is an interesting hobby or career or profession. When I first moved back, I was just going to start the farm, and I was hoping to be the farmer and purveyor of chefs in the Boise area. So I started doing that, and then I had some restaurants prior COVID. After COVID, I moved all my operations out to Hammett, where my family has property. My first initial farm was there in Hammett, and then I've had two different farms here in the Boise area. I was trying to grow food and bring it to the local market instead of bringing it all the way to Boise. And through years of frustration of not being able to sell it, not having a market for, there just wasn't a market in the Mountain Home area at the farmers market. I was driving down Second Street all the time, and I saw this for rent sign. Ever since I moved back, I've always been the two streets in Mountain Home, Second and Main, have a kind of a little mystique about them, kind of like I remember in some of the small cities in Maine. And I always thought that, man, it'd be great to have a little shop in one of these places here. Last fall, I just decided to do it. I pulled the trigger and started cooking soup and salads. And then in the new year, I started this new dinner series called Epic Idaho, which is a 5-course meal. Like I harvest and cook 3 days before and 3 days after the full moon. And it's at the big communal table I have that sits 8 people. People get to see me cook right in front of them. And now it's almost June, and we've been doing that ever since.
Do you take reservations for that currently? I think you said you're on, is it Open Table?
Yes. So actually, the Epics dinner series has been doing so great. We've decided to take reservations Monday through Saturday, 5 to 8 o'clock. I have a couple different offerings. Monday through Thursday, I do a 3-course, which changes every month. Every month we change all the menus. On the new moon, we release it. And so it's a 3-course, and we'll highlight a local protein as the middle course, like soup, salad, entree, dessert. And then on Friday and Saturday, I also do a 6-course, which is going to be highlighting lots of local fish and then that same local ranch of protein, and also Evans Farmstead cheese, which is located in Buell. And so it's a cheese course, and then a dessert. And then during the full moon, which should last the whole week in the month, we do a 5-course menu that riffs very similar to what that 6-course is, but I also write it in haiku, and sometimes I change it a little bit.
So you write the menu in haiku?
Yeah.
That's awesome. If folks were interested in making reservations for either of those 3, 5, 6-course meals, is it under the Farmer Stash or is it under Epic Idaho as far as the listing on Open Table?
Farmer Stash is the name of the restaurant, so that's how you'd find it. Farmerstash.com, Farmer Stash on Open Table. .com, and on there you can make reservations Monday through Thursday, and then the Epic is a ticketed event, so you need to buy tickets because it sells out really fast.
That's only 8 people, right?
8 people per night.
One table, 8 people.
And just this last month, I started doing working with House of Wine here in Boise, doing wine pairings, and so they pair wine, suggest the wines for all the menus I do for anybody coming from Boise because I'm also a BYOB restaurant. So
okay, so you can bring your own bottles of wine or what have you.
Yeah,
nice.
So I do make kombucha and at the Farmer's Stash, which on Fridays and Saturdays I currently have I call it market days, and so during the day I sell market fresh pizza, salads, soups, and any produce that's in season, and then some baked goods. I have a group of local artists that help me in the cooking, and they also showcase their art in the walls. One artist, he's a cartoonist, and he makes cartoons of the ingredients on the menu, which is pretty neat. So every menu is unique, and it has human-made art on every menu. And then there's also all local artists. There's probably right now there might be over 50 pieces, I think, on the walls for sale.
So give us a flavor of maybe a recent 5-course meal that you did.
Last epic meal for amuse bouche was a black garlic fermented asparagus with shaved smoked paprika manchego from Evanston Farm Cheese, smoked sturgeon, and trumpet mushrooms with a soup of asparagus grilled with spruce tips. So actually, I grill asparagus with spruce tips and run that through a juicer, and that is the broth for the soup, which is pretty extraordinary, if I have to say. And then next course would be green tomato chutney, yogurt, and smoked trout, and with a smoked trout mousse and baby carrots. So a fun little thing I usually serve a dish in a terracotta pot to tie in the gardening aspects I do, to be a little fun thing. Usually it's a dessert and it looks like a little pot and it looks like stuff's growing out of there, but it's actually all edible. But this one we did with smoked trout mousse and with popped wild rice on top. So it looked kind of like dirt and carrots were growing out of it, but it's actually smoked trout mousse and green tomato chutney from last year on the very bottom. Next course, Cole roasted lamb shank dances with chickpea. So chickpea in multiple textures, puree, soft, crispy, fermented vegetable, tomatoes and zucchini from last year. And then I did an omakase tasting of King's Crown organic beef, which is a very, very nice quality beef that's I get from a local farmer in Glenns Ferry. They actually grow King's Crown. Actually, they're my neighbors. My family's known them for 20 plus years, I'm sure. And that was multiple different cuts, but I could say the last one was ribeye with a black garlic juice, garlic chive powder, smoked brisket, black garlic barbecue sauce, dehydrated kimchi, and then oxtail in a red wine curry reduction. And the dessert was a rhubarb compote, raw cream, ginger ice cream, and vanilla shortbread.
That's elaborate. That sounds great. No wonder you're selling out. You're booking up quick. So thanks for sharing that. You were also co-owner of former Boise restaurants, Camel's Crossing, which you mentioned, and State and Lemp. Were you the executive chef with those entities, and then also what happened with them?
Yeah, I was chef of both of those places. Originally, I was supposed to just be consulting to open the restaurant because I'm farming. I don't know. Next thing I knew, I was talking to being a partner, and then the publicity came, and then within a year, we were buying another restaurant, State and Limp. Within another less than a half a year, the partners I had were saying it was too much work for them, and they wanted to just go do their Camel's Crossing, and I took on State and Limp, and I didn't do very good. I closed within a year. Yeah.
Restaurant business is a tough business.
Yeah.
We owned restaurants, my wife and I. It takes some intestinal fortitude to be able to do a restaurant successfully, and the amount of hours you put in it's inordinate.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Now I know. I would never buy a restaurant again. I would start it from $1 before I'd buy something. Because it's exactly what I want, and it's growing as fast as my skill can make it grow.
Right. Yeah. And is the Chef's Farm, do you have a website?
Yeah. So I have two websites, the farmerstash.com and then the chefsfarm.com.
Good deal. And again, if people want to make reservations, they can go to Open Table. That's fantastic. We always end with the tip of the show, which is the acronym for the Idaho Podcast. What would be your tip for our listeners?
If it grows together, it goes together.
If it grows together, it goes together. Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you, Christian, for being on the Idaho Podcast today. We wish you and your restaurant the very best. Sounds like you already have terrific success, and just appreciate your sharing your stories and your experiences in the culinary realm, and wish you just nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Idaho Podcast, and be sure to check us out on the idahopodcast.com, where you'll see all kinds of links for other resources that are available to you as well. Hope you have a great week. Take care.